All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 1883 Speaker Series. My name is Mike Wozniak, and I serve as the Coordinator of Leadership and Programming in the Student Involvement and Parent Programs Office. Over the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds, we'll explore a new lesson in leadership and gain valuable insights to support both our personal and professional growth. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming UND alumna and owner of Grand Real Estate, Amber Flynn.
I felt like I was in a dream once. Like really a dream. The kind where your feet float in the kind where time stands still. Then I hit the ground really, really hard. I looked up at the branches, laying on the ground trying to catch my breath from a tree that I had just fallen from about 20 feet. Thinking, how am I going to explain this to my mom and dad? I tried to bear hug that tree and I failed. When I stood up, I realized I couldn't stand. I laid back down on my stomach, my cheek touching the dirt, sound of mosquitoes on my back, and I laid there for 30 minutes while my friend went and got help. It was about 6 weeks before my freshman year of high school. I crushed a vertebrae, broke another, and I collapsed a lung. And I showed up on the first day as a freshman with a mouthful of metal, a back brace, and the best Nike sweatpants suit that you could find in town. It was humbling. It forced me to understand that I had a different way of life. Previous to that moment, I was a multi-sport athlete. I had rollerblades anytime that I could put them on. I was chasing a soccer ball around a field, playing basketball, volleyball, and I couldn't do that anymore. Instead, I had to carefully count the steps that I walked up and down at Central High School, because who knows if the elevator was working that day or not. I realized that in that moment, it meant that slowing down didn't mean falling behind, but that it meant sometimes catching up with yourself. There were a lot of other lessons I learned later in the years where this incident helped framed the way that I thought about this perspective I'm going to share with you today. I could have sat there and wished that I could rollerblade again or play in the many sports that I played in. But instead, I decided to look at the beauty from exactly where I was standing. That fall literally and figuratively changed me. I was very lucky. I could have been paralyzed. I'm not. But I realized in that moment, the seed of what I'm going to talk about today, that the grass is green where you water it, not on the other side. Throughout our time together today, I'm going to frame this concept through 4 perspectives: in passion, perspective, grace, and compassion. I own a real estate company, and there we go. I can tell you firsthand that sometimes your neighbor's grass is greener because their water bill is higher. If any of you have a neighbor like that, you know that they take very meticulous care of their lawn, and they are very passionate about its pristine condition. But it also probably takes a lot of hard work. When I think about passion, I think about showing up even when it's really hard. There have been times in my life where I've been passionate about a lot of things, and I sometimes feel like maybe I'm not as passionate about it anymore, especially in seasons of exhaustion and burnout. Between running a business, serving on multiple boards, raising 3 kids, being a wife, I sometimes don't even feel passionate about what I'm making for dinner that night. But I learned that passion isn't always a roaring fire, and sometimes it's an ember that needs tending to. A few years ago, I learned what the root of the word passion really means. I have a friend who makes it her life mission whenever she travels to befriend the person next to her on the airplane. Some of you may hate that person, some of you may love that person, and some of you might be that person. But nonetheless, she met a nice man who happened to be a linguistics professor and a published author on this very topic. And he said, "Did you know that the root of the word passion comes from the Latin pati, which means to suffer?" Mind blown. In that moment, I had an aha moment. It reminded me that passion isn't just about excitement and enthusiasm, but it's about enduring the difficult parts about what we care most deeply about. Now, I know that we all like to think of ourselves as very passionate people, but while we're trying to live our lives and also trying to occasionally remember where we put our cell phone or our coffee, it can feel like one more thing on the to-do list, and it can feel pretty exhausting. Viktor Frankl once said that those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. That's when the why turns hard work into hard work. Heart work. What is your why? One of the things that I think leaders don't talk about as often enough when we're comparing ourselves and playing the comparison game, when we're wishing we had more, when we're wishing it was easier, or we feel like we're at the end of the road and want to give up. We don't talk enough about burnout and leadership and mental health. So, because I'm standing here today, I think it's only important, as I have the platform, to talk about mental health. Therapy is a game changer, and if you don't have a therapist, it's interesting to find someone in your life to work through these things that are hard. Through therapy, I learned that sometimes hard work and heart work are conflicting. Sometimes it's a battle, sometimes it's a conflict, and sometimes it feels like suffering, just like passion does. Did you know that burnout is the #1 reason why people leave leadership roles? It's not pay, it's not politics, it's burnout. So maybe the answer isn't wishing for something to be greener or finding green grass on the other side or giving up. But maybe it's learning how to rest and not quit. Maybe it's learning to tend to what you have and not compare yourself to others. Let's talk about perspective for a second. There was this big, beautiful tree that I passed by on the way to my parents' house. It was like a canopy of leaves. It was bold. It stood out kind of on its own. And one day, when I drove by, it looked like this. It was flat. It was broken. It had been hollowed out by a lightning storm. I didn't understand this as a metaphor until I saw this. Same tree, different angle. No one would ever known that it had faced pain, suffering, and brokenness. I seem to have a lot of metaphors about trees. That's not purposeful. but it taught me a lesson that sometimes leadership and life is a lot like this tree. It's easy to make judgments from one side of the story, but if you shift your perspective even slightly, you might see what looks whole and strong, but you may never see the pain and the suffering behind it. Now, this is an example of looking at perspective externally at others. How can you see themselves? How can you be in conversation with someone else that you don't agree with? Let me talk about perspective internally as well. When I showed up as a freshman on UND's campus, I was 17 years and 3 months to be exact. I was young, first generation college student, really didn't know much about college life. I lived at home till I moved out of my house when I was a senior into my sorority, got involved when I was a senior. But as a freshman, I thought I had it all figured out, and boy, was I wrong. So I show up to Gamble Hall, American Government, Stephen Light's lecture. He was one of my first professors. There's 100 desks in there, 100 plus, and I noticed something right away, that whoever designed that room didn't follow the 10% rule, that there are 10% of left-handed people in any given space. So I, as a left-handed person, knew that I was going to have to contort my body in this desk to write my notes that I could barely read, and that the hand smudge was going to be inevitable. Until I sat down and I saw 2 left-handed desks with 2 right-handed people sitting in them. I thought to myself, don't they know that those desks are for left-handed people? Don't they know that I want that desk? Don't they know that I would be a better note taker if I had one of those desks? My perspective changed when I realized that it's up to me to think about things from a different perspective. I could adapt, and I could adjust, and dang it, I could show up early for class to make sure I got one of those desks. We see different perspectives play out in communities often. I serve on our school board, which I have the privilege of doing in town here. People come to the microphone sometimes and share their stories. They share harsh words at times. Sometimes it's met with anger, tears, and words that sting. And my instinct at times is to defend or correct them. But over the years, I've learned to listen to what's underneath. Because usually those words aren't about policy or disagreement. They're about pain. They're about love for their children. They're about fear. Grace is one of those things that's easy to preach about but hard to do, especially when we see things from a different perspective, when we're passionate about our own things, and especially when we're looking outward and we want what someone else has that we don't have. It's also hard to practice with people that share your last name. Let me give you an example. In my house, I put things on the stairs that I think should be picked up and put away. My kids, and maybe sometimes my husband, think it's a strategic obstacle course. They sometimes run into the obstacle course. They sometimes pick up the obstacle course. They sometimes bounce through the obstacle course or avoid it altogether. You see, I could get frustrated about this, which sometimes I do. But I realized that in life, we all see the same obstacles. We just navigate them differently. Grace means giving other people the space to grow at their own pace. And sometimes keeping your mouth shut at a school board meeting when people are sharing their perspective, even if you think they're wrong. Sometimes it's messy. And you have to realize that things don't need to be fixed immediately. Sometimes people need to be heard. And sometimes progress looks a lot like patience, just like it does when you're tending to your grass. If grace means giving space, then compassion is filling it with love. Brené Brown says that compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a relationship between equals. When we lead with compassion, we stop comparing lawns and we start building gardens. Compassion is meeting people where they are, not where you wish they were. It's the quiet strength that often allows us to stay soft when the world feels hard. Compassion isn't a weakness, it's wisdom. It's what builds trust. It turns frustration into collaboration. And it starts with the courage to see yourself and others as humans. We're all flawed. We're all trying. We're all learning. But this is where grace and compassion intersect. You can't offer compassion if you don't practice it inwardly. And maybe that's the point. Maybe at the end of the day, we're all just existing in the same yard, watering our own patches of grass, tending to what we see right in front of us. We'll never win at the comparison game. We'll never win when we think about things that we don't have, because the opportunity that's right in front of us will pass by. One of the favorite movies I watched during COVID was a movie called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. If you've ever seen it, it's about a story about a boy who's kind of trying to find himself, has some loneliness issues, and ends up walking through a blizzard with all of these animals. He was upset. He could see the light from the town that he was trying to get back to. And he said, I can't do it. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. And one of the animals said, can you see your feet? He looked down. He said, yeah. And one of the animals then remarked, you just have to take the next step. He was grounded. He knew where he needed to go, but he was looking for something when it was right underneath him. Is this working? Okay. Let's see what I got here. Okay. This is my son, our son, Joseph. He just turned 5, and in this picture, he's about 1 year old. Standing right here on this stage or nearby it, his tiny hands gripping the edge of the stairs, probably looked like a huge obstacle course to him. Towering, impossible. And now I get to stand in the same spot or close by it. Different perspective, but the same ground. This is what it comes down to. No matter where you are, no matter what season you're in, you can make the grass green where you stand. So water it, tend to it. And when it feels dry, maybe borrow some water from your neighbor's hose. Make his water bill go up. Because your patch deserves to be as green as you make it. Thank you.